everyone, I am Marcie Trivette, Miss North Carolina, United States, and my personal platform is Autism Speaks. This stems from my younger brother being diagnosed with high-functioning autism years ago, and for years I've always told his story for him, but I want him to tell his story in his own words today. So, Karsten, my younger brother. All right, so let's talk about when you were diagnosed. How old were you?
11.
11
years old. Yeah.
And what do you remember about it?
I guess I remember most is Mom coming into the room and just having a worried expression on her face. She wanted to talk to me, and Dad was there as well. So I started out she just started listing a list of symptoms. Now I didn't really know what she was talking about, and then she finally told me that they had actually called Dr. Stegman, and between the two of them they had decided that based on everything that they have found that I had Asperger's.
Mm-hmm. And Asperger's, as we know now, is now called high functioning autism, but it's all the same. Mm-hmm. So you were 11, and how was school going for you? I mean, was it difficult? What challenges were you facing?
The most challenging thing was just trying to understand people's nonverbal communication, their language. I never really had a problem talking in front of a class so much, or speaking with people about normal topics, but it was the jokes I didn't understand, and the conversations before class and after class that always seemed to bother me because I wasn't very good at understanding sarcasm and other things like that. Yeah. So organization also was another hard part. I wasn't good at keeping things in line, or remembering where to put my papers or when to turn in things. That was the toughest part.
Yeah, I remember your teachers calling your book bag the black hole.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so it was difficult having conversations with your peers. So was it difficult making friends with kids your own age?
Yes.
It was.
I related much better when I was a little kid to actually full-grown adults than I actually did people my own age.
Okay. And why do you think that is?
I was better at talking about topics that were more factual, topics that people talk about as adults, not so much games and stuff that people were talking about as kids, but actual real life events. I was better at talking to people that I met.
Yeah. All right, so when you were diagnosed, you talk about how it was difficult understanding people's jokes and sarcasms and nonverbal communication as well, and you related better with much older adults. So now that you're 19, what has changed?
I started in high school trying to just relate better to people. I took the classes with Angie for communication and just trying to think about what people really meant, even though they were maybe say one thing and mean another. It's like a 40-60 kind of thing. It's 40% what you say and 60% how you say it. So I had to keep that in my mind. Now that I'm older, people started talking about the topics that I've always talked about. So I relate better to people in college now than I did when I was little. But I like to have fun, and so I've gotten better at joking around, especially with my small group of friends that I always hang around with in our dorm. And I don't feel like I have a problem fitting in anywhere anymore.
No. So for parents who are out there who have a child who has just been diagnosed with high-functioning autism, what would you tell that parent if you met them?
Be patient. I think that's the biggest thing. And try not to think about what the child is acting like now. You have to. I think the biggest thing is when we figure out that something's wrong with somebody, or they're not like everybody else, we immediately try to put our will on them. We try to figure out what's wrong, and it's like, let's solve this. Let's put them in classes. Let's tell them this, do this, don't do this. When really a lot of all they need is just time. For me, it just took me time to grow up, and time to start learning how to relate to people, and time to be able to understand how people communicate better. And it wasn't necessarily the classes or the or the lecturing or any of that. It was just I needed time to learn how to fit in as an adult, and it takes some people longer than others.
Right.
So be patient.
That's a good point. So another thing that you've probably heard, I don't want to assume that you have, but you probably have, is someone saying, well, you don't look like you have autism.
Yeah.
So
a couple times.
What would you say to a person that says, well, you don't look like you have autism?
I would tell them that it's not something you can see. It's a developmental disorder, I believe it's categorized as. So it's something that it's mental. It's just the brain working in ways that we can't even begin to understand yet. And so it's just minor differences that I have from normal people. And I would tell them, don't judge a book by its cover. Get to know me first, and you might never be able to see that I actually have it because I've learned how to cope with it. But I would just tell them that I do. It is a real thing, and don't treat me any differently than a normal person.
Right. So what do you think now, today, that you're 19, you're a freshman, getting ready to finish up your freshman year and move on to your sophomore year at Appalachian State? What do you think makes you different than other students your age? How do you think differently? What runs through your mind that makes you different?
I like to think outside the box. When I went to NC State summer camp a couple years ago, you remember that? All the professors told me the whole time that I was thinking outside the box too much, and I always remember laughing at getting home and telling my dad that, and he's laughing because it's not a bad thing. I think in different ways. I'm trying to come up with new ideas, and renewable energy is my thing. So thinking outside the box is what I need to be doing. So I think I think differently, and I try to be creative, even in the fields where creativity is not necessarily seen so much. Right. I like to be creative in everything that I do.
And that's awesome. So that sets you apart now. Now, what things did you do when you were younger that they called symptoms?
Okay.
What things did you do when you were younger that set you apart from other children?
I always liked counting things. I liked lining things up, and I liked certain things to be organized. The first thing my dad actually thought I had is OCD, because I used to, line up my toys or whatever I was playing with. I was kind of quiet, kind of shy. It was hard for me to, again, relate to other kids in my classes. But besides that, I didn't have any negative attributes, I don't think. I was just a little different. I acted a little different.
So I remember a trip we took as a family to Disney World. Mm-hmm. You remember this trip?
Yeah.
What was your thoughts of Disney World at the time? I think you were probably 9 or 10 when we went to Disney World.
I think I was like a little younger than that, actually.
Yeah, you might have been a little younger. It's been a long time.
I loved the actual park itself. It was just, there was so many people. It was really, really crowded, and it was very loud. And I remember, not being able to hear what my parents were trying to tell me, and just being overwhelmed by so many people going in so many different directions. It was kind of frustrating, because I had never been around that many people before, and then I just kind of got stuck there. It was 100 degrees. And
really hot.
I remember just thinking that I wanted to go home because it was too much.
From the happiest place on earth.
Supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly. Okay, so that was one experience that you had. Mm-hmm. So you had difficulty with friends your own age, and trips to Disney World, and organization, and things like that. And then you had therapy.
Yes.
And you were on medication to help you sleep for a while, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're a freshman in college. What do you like to do now? What are things that you love to do that some people may have said, I could have never pictured him doing that? What's some things that you're involved in?
I play rugby. Rugby is a very fast-paced, quick decision sport. So, a lot of people, they assume that because people are on the spectrum, they can't be athletic. That's not true. I'm a Division II athlete now. people don't think that I would, like to be out socializing with people, but that's also not true, because I helped my friend run for SGA president. That was a lot of talking to people, groups, organizations, clubs. So I'm social, which people think is not necessarily an attribute that they associate with that, but I am. And I love to be outside. I love to experience new places and go new places. Some people think that being on the spectrum means that you don't like any change, but that's not necessarily true. I love to eat at new restaurants. My goal is to eat at every restaurant in Boone by the time I graduate.
Where are you at on the list?
I have like 10 of them done. So
okay.
You
still have a ways to go.
Yes.
Okay, so you've pretty much wrapped it up that you've come a long way since you've been diagnosed with high functioning autism.
Oh yeah.
You've come leaps and bounds from where you were. So now that people know that, is there anything else you want to tell them about your story and what makes it so special?
The only thing I would say is that the hardest part for me is being misdiagnosed. They thought I had ADD, and then they thought I had a disorganizational thing. It was a dyspraxia, and then I got diagnosed. I wish I would have been diagnosed sooner, so that it wouldn't have taken me as much time to learn how to cope with it. So the best thing I can say that I would hope that people would do is try to come up with a better way to diagnose, and really take the time and sit down with a doctor if your child is having behavioral issues or is behaving in a way that you think is strange. I think it's important to have the conversation when they're little and try to figure that out, so that child you give them the chance to have enough time, because it is a lot harder to do in high school, which is when I was figuring everything out, versus if I would have been able to do in elementary school, it would have been a lot easier. But I feel like even though I was set back a few years, I was diagnosed at 11, I did a good job, and I am proud of, what I've become, who I've become. And
I'm proud of you too. Okay, and last question. So we know that there's no cure for autism. We don't even know what really causes autism. But let's say, for instance, they did come up with what caused it and they found a cure.
Okay.
Would you want that personally?
Overall, I say no, because I like who I am, and I think I'm a pretty good person. The only thing that I would like is if I didn't have to put so much work into staying organized. So if they came up with that, I would take the organizational part. But aside from that, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because besides, having to take a lot more time and it's a lot of work to stay organized, nothing else really bothers me anymore.
Okay, awesome. Well, we know that you're just one case on the autism spectrum. And there's so many kids out there who are on different ends of the spectrum. And so I'm so glad that you were able to tell your story finally in your own words, so that everyone knows the Karsten Granja story of high functioning autism. So thanks a lot. Love you.
Love you too, Jess.